Babble with Ben.
This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation. I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be participating today. Welcome to the Babble. Welcome back to the Babble. Taylor Macleod from Golden Estates.
Hey, how you going?
Yeah, I'm going good. It's good to have you back on. How are you going?
Mate, it is, it's good to be back. I'm going pretty well. You know, things have been going pretty well with the band and all that kind of stuff. Personal life, it's been pretty crazy at the moment, but reaping the rewards, so to speak.
Last time I talked to you, you guys, Golden Estates was in its infancy and it was yet to even put something out on SoundCloud, I think. But now here you are, you've done multiple gigs. You have got at least one recording out on SoundCloud now, haven't you? Which one's that?
We've actually got 3 out at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's even better. More to listen to. So we have our demo versions of Perilous Roadsides and Sweet Sensations. That's the name of the first one that went up. We also have our absolute banger and personal band favorite, Wedding Rings. That is... We still love that one to this day, and we love jamming it out. We love playing it live, all that kind of thing. And we also have our song A Million Seasons, which is that's definitely a fun one to play live, and that's a fun one to actually. Well, it was fun to write initially, and that's probably one of our. I guess in hindsight, that's probably one of our oldest songs. That was, I think, if I remember correctly, the second song we actually started working on as a band all the way back when in like 2019.
That's amazing. And so 3 years later...
3 years later and it's finally banging.
I had the absolute pleasure of supporting you guys for your first ever gig at the Evelyn Hotel.
Oh,
and
we were loving that. That was a fantastic gig.
It was such a good gig. I mean, I definitely rocked up with. I'd had a sore throat for the last 2 days, and I had never done a gig before. Like I was absolutely shitting myself. Like I was so terrified.
Know exactly how that feels.
And it was nice to sort of be in the trenches with you guys because you were feeling a certain kind of way as well, I could tell, right?
Yeah, there were definitely the nerves. I think it was more just the anticipation of what could happen and what was going to happen. And the fact is there was some pretty there was like a mixture of frustration there as well as kind of nerves and just the normal band anxiety you'd get, which never really goes away. I mean, I've never really lost the feeling of getting nervous before going on stage, you know. Even if that's a smaller crowd, like a smaller venue, as opposed to, I don't know, a big open space where you're on the back of one of those carnival truck things, like one of those trailers, and you're playing to like 2,000 plus people have done that.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that was pretty good to do that, but it doesn't really matter the size of the crowd because sometimes the size of the crowd feels like it changes with the density as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes if you pack out a room with like 20 or 40 people or something, then it's going to feel like it's way bigger and it's more nerve-wracking, but I do prefer those kind of indoorsy kind of shows where you can actually, I don't know, you can feel the energy of the crowd a little bit more. That kind of thing. So
the energy from the crowd was certainly there, mate. Certainly there. I was
remember.
there in the audience.
We definitely were looking out. We were seeing people like having a little bit of a jig, you know, that kind of thing, and absolutely rocking out. Some people were absolutely going full out with the moves, like just busting them out, and that was interesting to watch. That was cool to watch. I had quite a few friends in the audience. A couple from my job actually come out and support us, and it doesn't really matter because they were like, yeah, we're coming out, we're supporting you. Doesn't matter if I got to work at like, I don't know, 6 a.m, I'll still come out. And we're just like, no, cheers, thanks for doing that. And to all those watching and all those who actually showed up, cheers for doing that because it made us feel pretty decent, I guess.
Absolutely. When I did my set, I did a little shout out to the Mildura people, and I got a good response. So I figured there'd be a few of your friends in the crowd
definitely.
There.
My younger sister's partner definitely rocked up, and he gave a bit of a round of applause for that one because I think he knew exactly who you were talking about.
Yeah. Oh, was that? So it was your younger sister's boyfriend, was it? Yeah,
he was definitely there, and he actually took a couple of our promotional shots as well. That
fantastic.
We've been using for our social medias and trying to promote ourselves and stuff like that, which has been good. I mean, they look fantastic, and they really captured the vibe of the band visually, I guess, and hopefully that translated well in the music as well. But it was very, it felt like it was heavier than what we were intending it to be in some parts a little bit as well, but that's all right. Like, I come from a heavy background, so it was kind of, I was happy with it.
The crowd was going off. I mean, for people at home that are interested in seeing what the performance was like, we've actually got a YouTube video of it, so we'll make a link for that. I think using the magic of computers somewhere on this video.
The magic of computers.
Or if it's on Spotify, we'll make a link to it in the description as well. But,
yeah, that would be pretty good. I mean, we're still yet to set up our own Spotify and do some legitimate recordings of some of these songs.
Oh, I think you guys are selling yourself short, aren't you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're happy with the sound of the demos, but I think we have actually come a little bit of a long way since the demo days. Like, we've actually had a bit of evolution in, personal guitar tones and bass tones and all that kind of thing. Because people might not know this and they might not suspect it, but the bass was actually recorded for the demos before Dimmy even joined the band, and I had to do it because we pretty much, so I was the one who played bass on the demos you hear online. And I'm pretty proud of the way they sound even to this day, but I mean, since Dimmy has joined the band, he's been able to bring his own flair to it, and it definitely sounds even better, especially when we play it live, and he's definitely brought along his own flavour with it, and we're absolutely thrilled with the way it sounds live, all that kind of stuff, and he just vibes so well with us, as you probably noticed when he was on stage with us. So we are grateful for definitely a good bass player to have live on stage with you. It's so good.
It's the difference between a guitarist that's playing bass and a dedicated bass player that just lives and breathes it. I've been that guitarist that plays bass as well, and it's not the same. It's like, it's not a big guitar. It's its own thing.
It's its own thing, and I'm not going to lie, I do enjoy playing both. So I enjoy playing bass as well, but it's just I feel like I'm not as practiced with it. Like, I'll put my heart, soul, and dedication into, learning guitar and all that kind of stuff, and learning techniques and just trying to go above and beyond with it. That's what you want to do as a guitar player. I haven't really, to this day, had the opportunity to put some of the more technical sounding guitar techniques and all the cool trills into our music, which I will eventually do, but possibly in future instrumental tracks. Because the way I think about it is I don't necessarily want to write or do anything that detracts from the other members of the band, and I don't want to make it all about myself,
Yep.
Like
communism.
We're a communist band, mate. with a weird kind of democracy about it as well. Yeah, whatever. We usually will vote upon a big decision the band's about to make or something like that.
That's good. I think you have to, because sometimes
we got to do that. We can't just dictate to each other what we're about to do and everything.
Some bands work that way. Some bands work well with like a dictator, and everyone else is just basically, VSTs with body odor. But but other bands, I know the bands I like. It's like, we're a team. Even when it comes down to things like the artist splits, right? Like,
100%.
It's always just like boom, even Stevens each time. And I think that that's the way it works for me. I don't know if it works the same for you, but
well, we haven't figured that out yet because, so far everything is evolving. So the songs that we know them already have kind of been, very kind of between maybe three people, but the songs are evolving to the part of everyone has brought their own parts to it. So
that's good.
So we now want to try and split it as like, okay, we're not going to be like, I don't know, bands like Metallica who are, it seems to be too writers at most on every single track, maybe with a third one, and it's very rare you'll see all 4 names credited.
It's Lars and James for
Lars
the most part,
James.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, they're the main guys, I think. Lars pretty much rocks up on every single track, and it's cool. Like, if bands
Works
wanna
for
work
them,
that way.
yeah.
Yeah, it works for them, and I mean they're all still multi-millionaire guys, so someone must like their music,
Even to this day.
Even to this day. Well, it's weird how many people actually. Well, it's not weird. It's good. How many people are getting into them now since they appeared on
Stranger Things?
On Stranger Things,
Yeah.
which is, if you're only getting into them now, then cool. Like, it's not like, oh, where have you been all this time kind of thing. It's just like, welcome to the party. You'll learn to grow to love and hate them like the rest of us fans.
Mixed feelings, yeah.
Mixed feelings,
Up
indeed.
until the 90s, great. Midway through the 90s,
Oh, I still enjoyed the mid-90s albums,
ya?
to be honest, I did. Even Saint Anger kind of had its weird charm to it, despite sounding like Lars was banging on a tin lid. For the most part, I still enjoyed the story behind it as well. Like, you watch the documentary, Some Kind of Monster and stuff, and I love it.
Oh, I remember that now, yeah.
I love that. It definitely makes for, it's a bit stupid in some parts and it's very funny. But it also goes to show, the human side of even one of the world's biggest bands. It's almost like a benchmark for me personally, realizing what you don't want to be in a band, what you don't want your band to actually be. You don't want the ego-driven bullshit, that kind of thing. You don't want that, and you want to try and avoid it if you can help it. And, every single time, you're in a band, you just want to try and be the best possible version of yourself, basically, so you don't end up with those ego clashes and your band doesn't end up falling either apart straight away or or be on the brink of it. And that's just my motivation. And so far with Golden Estates, we haven't reached that point yet. We've had some difficulties on the inside, 100%. Like every band who wants to try and get themselves out there will come across. But so far we've been fortunate, basically.
What are you finding? Because you are sort of at the what's the word to describe? You're sort of at the budding stage now. Like, you've gone through the periods of being the bedroom demo now, and now you're starting to gig. What are the challenges? I mean, I know you told me not to say this, but apart from parking inspectors, what are the main challenges of gigging? Can you tell the audience at home exactly what happened? Because it is a good story, and as much as
okay, yeah, okay. So what actually happened was, I got there first up, like the 2 guitar players. It's usually the guitar players of any band that will rock up first to load out our stuff, and we paid for our time. Like, we paid the 2 hours.
this is on Brunswick Street, isn't it? In front of the
This
Evelyn,
was out the
which
front
is
of-
notorious for parking
Oh,
inspectors.
it's
Yeah,
notorious. I hate them all. Sorry, if you're a parking inspector.
no Christmas cards for you.
No anything for you. You can fuck right off. Seriously, what happened was we parked. He parked a couple of moments after me, and I thought it best to
This is you and Elijah, isn't it?
me and
Yeah,
Elijah.
yeah.
Yeah. So we parked out the front of the Evelyn, and we didn't think we'd have
About
to.
6-ish or something like that, or
No, we ended up getting there closer to 15 to 5, I think what it was.
Oh, yeah.
We got there pretty early
Yep,
because
yep.
yeah, I'm very much the kind of person who likes to get up there first and physically help out if I can. Help with the loadout, help all the musicians, not even from my own band.
Make friends with the soundy. Yeah.
Make friends with the soundy, and I like doing that, and help him set up in any kind of way I do, because I've got a background in that too. I like doing it.
Yeah.
So it's never going to be a hardship for me, and I'm never going to hate doing it, It's always going to be a bit of a slog. But getting back to the parking thing, what actually happened was we parked there. We paid for our time, and
Expensive too, isn't it? It's like at least $5 an hour for Brunswick Street, or
I think it was like 2 or 3, so it
that's
wasn't
not so bad.
Wasn't
Yeah.
too bad. And we paid, I think it was a grand total of about maybe $15, maybe that, yeah. But free time started after 6:30, and when the ticket expired, or when our time expired, both of us, was like after that. So we
Yeah.
paid for time until after the free thing. And so we kind of thought we were in the clear.
Was it 1 hour or 2 hour?
I honestly can't remember.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
off the top of my head, the signs are so cryptic that you almost have to be an expert in hieroglyphics to understand them. So basically what happened was we thought we were in the clear. And so we go and get food and we do all that kind of stuff as we wanted to do as a band before we go on stage, not have like a full heavy meal and
Of course,
feel
yeah,
bloated before you go on. But no, we wanted to just get something in the system beforehand. I don't think Jovan had food with us, but he was definitely with us. Like he was with the band and all that kind of other stuff. As we were kind of having some food, we ended up settling for like souvlakis.
On Brunswick Street, I can almost picture the souvlaki shop you went to as well. Yeah.
The one that also does like pizzas and all that kind of
Yep,
stuff. So,
yep, yep.
that exact
Oh,
one.
many a 2 a.m. pizza at that place. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's the goal really, to end up there. And given the fact that's around the corner from the Night Cat as well.
And bar open. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, bar open, all these kind of places. So some great gigs happen at the Night Cat and all that kind of stuff. So we got our food, we came back. Huey had just kind of played and I was sitting there watching it. I look out at my car to make sure, like, because I don't really trust people on Brunswick Street either. Kind of just
Well, you're kind of right. Yeah.
yeah, well, it's just like you don't really trust it, whether there's going to be some drug head kind of get into your car if they see something they think they can pawn off or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm always paranoid about that, even if I park in places like Brunswick and Fitzroy and all that kind of stuff. I'm very paranoid over my car and people trying to like break into it because you hear stories and all that kind of stuff.
Mine has been for a broken laptop. Someone cracked open my rear passenger window, and so
That story kind of happens quite a lot, and there's been a fair few friends of ours who have made that claim of that's what's happened, and it's almost to the point of it's a paranoid experience almost.
Yeah,
like
of course.
You get very paranoid over it, and so I check out my car and I notice on the windscreen there's a little white bit of paper. So I'm like, I'm going to go see what this is about. And surely enough, Elijah's also got one, and we're both whacked with $92 fines.
just before you're about to play your first gig as a band.
Just before that, so that was the main source of frustration for myself, and which kind of may have worked in favor because it did speed up the energy on stage, and it kind of made that kind of just, it felt like mixed with nerves, of course, because you don't know what's going to happen, but that's what we contended with. So me and Elijah were both very annoyed boys.
I had an extra pint for you. I felt your frustration. Definitely.
Oh, Matt, I wish I could have indulged in a pint, but like I'm not as good at guitar when I indulge in pints before going on stage. Unfortunately, I wish I was one of those guys that just plays better. But that depends on the crowd, how many they've had as well.
Well, that's the big giveaway, isn't it? It's like, yeah.
It's like the more they have, the better we are. So
There is a big thing like that. I mean, I know before I was on stage, I definitely had a few pints. And when I watched the footage back, I was like, oh, I can see where I was a bit sloppy there. But in the same way, I have been talking to my psychologist about, numbing anxiety with alcohol and all the different strategies to get around it. And I definitely know that it probably helped me to get on stage, but it is something that, I'm trying to get over in the future. I mean, like it's true. Like there is sort of a sweet spot where you've got to sort of numb the anxiety, but then you've also got to be able to make sure you don't hit all the strings at once when you don't intend to.
Yeah, exactly, that kind of thing. And I remember the days, one of my old bands, when we were playing a little bit back in Mildura, if it was a house party or something like that, and people were like, have a beer, mate, or something before you go.
And the rest, yeah.
Just a beer. I knew to pace it. Even then, I didn't really go all out at house parties. And I actually, if anything more, just tried to avoid drinking heavily because, I've never liked the idea of having a fat head in the morning and feeling just feeling like absolute shit. I don't like that. Never really have, but sometimes I've absolutely indulged on certain nights. But it's not something that's ever really grabbed my fancy. Like, I've never been the kind to actually enjoy clubbing and things like that. So it's not something I did very often. There was a point in 2015, which I think was my final year of living in Mildura. Pretty much most nights, if someone invited me out to go clubbing or something, I would stay sober, and I'd be the
you'd be that guy.
I'd be the designated driver. I'd just be like, because I'd usually have to start work early the next morning. So it was just kind of like, you don't want to do that anyway. And I was only on my red Ps at that time, so that means
so you do have to
alcohol.
behave. Yeah.
And I got into the habit of regularly just breath testing at the main club because they had self-breathalyzer there and all that kind of stuff. So
it's a good idea, yeah.
So I always checked that, even though if I wanted to drink, it was usually like lemonade or something. You just don't want to think to yourself. I was overly cautious back in the day, especially with like cops and stuff, because being a rural town,
Yeah, they're looking for something to do, that's for sure.
They're looking for something to do and someone to, we get the picture. But it doesn't help to be overly cautious it does help.
yeah, totally.
More like I should have said. But that's what we found ourselves in the position of doing, is just trying to be good. And I've always tried to be good, basically, but sometimes you got to have a bit of fun, right?
Absolutely.
We're kids once, so we got to learn all the hard things about all the hard ways.
Definitely know what too much is by finding it. Yeah, definitely.
Finding out what that actually is.
When you wake up at like 1 p.m. with a headache and and you're short of breath, you're like, oh yeah, probably overdid it last night.
Probably. I mean, I'm getting closer to 30 now, and I'm just realizing how much I A, can't do it anymore, and B, probably just don't want to. Like, for me, if I go out, I'll have like a couple of beers or something, and that'll be me. Especially if I've got my car with me anyway. Like, that's the main motivator to probably not drink as much.
Well, that's it, and especially if you're, if you're pulling off D7 sharp 9 arpeggios at 130 BPM afterwards, as you do with Golden Estates. So
yes, you kind of thinking to yourself, maybe I won't be able to do this if I'm absolutely fermented.
Then you bring out the Van Halen tapping. No worries, mate. Yeah.
Oh man, the way I'm kind of doing it now is I want to kind of work on stage presence with my guitar solos as well, and I want to try and make them even better. I would not be surprised if I start doing some more two-handed tapping, which is something I kind of have done a lot in the past anyway, but I've almost kind of shelved that style of playing for a bit because I don't really, Golden Estates isn't really a metal band, so it doesn't really have that calling for it necessarily.
It's kind of a fusion band, isn't it?
It's definitely a fusion.
Like a bluesy funk fusion, yeah?
Yeah, we have so many influences in the music. There's funk in there, there's jazz elements, there's blues elements, and most of the blues elements come from Elijah.
Yeah.
And myself as well, like I love a lot of those same guitar players that he does. But, there's also elements of a couple of our songs, or the ones I've previously done, are inspired by Japanese J-rock kind of thing.
J-rock, yeah.
So there's jazz chords in that as well, and there's sometimes it delves into weird time signatures and stuff like that, which I don't do too often, but I will do a little bit more because I know the guys love kind of music that delves into weird territory, like odd time signatures and all that kind of thing. So we do have a couple of songs which have that, but we have to sit down as a band and kind of work them out.
Do some soloing over 7/8. I've always admired people that can do that because that just seems so challenging. It's like, one early, go, yeah.
Yep, it's a tough one. But I like doing, I do enjoy just odd time signatures. Like, not all the time. Sometimes I just feel like some bands do it for the sake of doing it. I mean, all credit to them if they can do it well. But, sometimes 4/4 is that seems to be the main go-to, or it's what feels natural. So
I know there are sometimes, I mean, I guess my main influence for weird time signatures would definitely be Tool. Like they seem to be like
Tool.
the kings of weird time. And sometimes I thought in their latest album was like, oh, you're kind of doing, 15/8 for the fun of it, right? Like,
just for the sake of actually saying something, yeah.
but then other times it's like, oh no, this is actually really good because it's. I find with the odd time signatures, right? Like it jumps you out of your seat. It's like, oh, wait a second, it skipped. It's like I don't know. It's almost like
Impossible to jump to in a mosh pit.
wow, that's it. And it's almost a bit like, I don't know whether you ever get this, but when you fall asleep and you just momentarily feel like you're falling and it's like, whoa.
Yep.
And weird time signatures are kind of that feeling for me. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I just fell a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. Or when you're kind of like, your eyes are open, you're still conscious, but then you're, damn, I'm still awake. Like I've been in that position before, so I know the feeling you're talking about. But yeah, sometimes just listening to odd music or listening to a style of music and then have something jump out at you, and then it's just kind of like, oh shit, okay, I'm still awake.
So apart from the J-rock, what have you been listening to lately? What's been on the top of your playlists?
I'm not gonna lie. Lately, I watched the Woodstock '99 documentary on
me
YouTube.
too.
Oh, how good is it? But
an eye opener because we were sort of like teenagers when that was. Oh no, you were a bit.
I
younger.
was a child, man.
You were a child. I was 18 or 19, and I heard the horror stories, but there was no internet back. Oh, there was very minimal internet.
Yeah.
But you were saying, you were watching it, and
I was watching it. I remember hearing stories about it, but not realizing how bad it actually
fucked up it was.
Yeah, how fucked up it actually got. And It probably shouldn't have done this, but it did reignite my love for Limp Bizkit.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even, like I remember this, like in primary school days as well, I just remember so many kids were going through their Limp Bizkit phase and all that kind of stuff. And like walking around and you're hearing teenagers on their Walkmans or like even younger guys, not yet teenagers, walking around on their Walkmans blasting Limp Bizkit. And weirdly enough, I enjoyed that too. But I mean, you probably shouldn't be singing some of these songs when you're 6 or 7.
That's the funny part of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
like there's no, I mean, like you've got wet ass pussy. Like, I can imagine the amount of kids that have had their like 10-year-olds saying wet ass pussy and just going,
sorry, Mum and Dad, for singing the song Nookie without knowing what it meant.
Oh yeah. No, I remember when that album came out, and I in much the same way that you sort of had a listen to Limp Bizkit, I definitely had a little listen to some Korn after watching that documentary. And they had Fred Durst on one of their songs as well, and like yeah, and it was a vibe, wasn't it?
It was a vibe, and recently, out of curiosity, because I never watched their full live set, but it is up on YouTube, I watched their entire live set, and I'm just like, I hate to say it, but even though, chaos was unfolding, especially by break stuff.
Oh, I tell you what,
that in itself was just kind of like, that was awesome. Like, he's probably one of the only frontmen I have actually seen to command an entire mosh pit like that from front to back, get them all up on their feet and jumping. I've not seen too many vocalists be able to pull that off, but Freddie, the other Freddie, there's Freddie Mercury who could also command a crowd like that, but maybe not to the point of actual chaos.
Well, I remember seeing that footage, and there was just like, look, if there were, if you imagine there were lines of people that were maybe, 300, 400?
Yeah.
200, and then they just went back for as far as the eye could see. It would I forget what they said it was, but it was at least
200 or 400,000 people were there or something.
For reference, the MCG is 50?
Yeah, something like that.
And so you're talking about 2 MCGs worth of kids just in an airfield.
An airfield, yeah.
There's no D barrier. I think the D barriers came in as a result of either that. Because you know how if you go to a gig now, like they've always got to split down the middle because, and they've got security in the middle now, which can sort of pluck you from the sides, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
I was seeing then, I was just like, man, like if you were like, 200 in either side, right, you were fucked.
Yeah, exactly. You would absolutely what probably would have felt like done for. And I just, obviously you look at some of the disgusting, horrible acts that the kids were doing. I cannot blame Limp Bizkit for, I never will, for the chaos that unfolded, because when you look at the reports and the way it was actually, the story was told, they actually took footage from the night afterwards when Red Hot Chili Peppers played, and they were responsible for the bonfires.
Well, I was going to say when they played "Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire," that was as equally irresponsible as break stuff. Yeah.
Exactly, but like, I think Fred Durst reveled in the fact that he was causing some absolute rowdiness in the crowd. But I still to this day don't believe he intentionally, like he even said, don't let anybody get hurt. Yeah. That kind of thing. And like, that's the full responsible kind of thing. Like if you're a band, a front, you can't see what's going on when your stage is that high up and the barrier between the crowd and the stage is that big. People probably just look like little dots, man. Like you don't know what's happening.
It was a sea of people,
Sea of people,
I don't know how, well, look, you couldn't possibly know what was going, 200 metres down that way. Like
you couldn't.
And his job is to hype the crowd up. I mean, God knows, like,
and he does a bloody good job of it even still.
Yeah.
Man's rocking 50 and he's in his 50s and he can still rock a crowd.
He's still doing it.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with the Chili Peppers now too. I mean, gosh, they
can still go, yeah.
We're coming up in the early 80s and like they've all got to be pushing 60 now? Or?
I'd say they'd have to be around 60, something like that. And they still absolutely go off. They're great performers live and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it's kind of like, especially with like modern day Chili Peppers, not necessarily the early 90s, but you hear one Chili Peppers song, you kind of heard them all. I mean, I still enjoy them. Yeah, I still enjoy them. Like, you wouldn't be able to listen to an album like Californication at full bore because of the loudness wars thing.
I did hear about that. Yeah.
And that's very true because
I think I have listened to that album. We did a road trip to Byron Bay very recently, and we did fang Californication. But you're right, there is that certain harshness to it, isn't there?
Yeah, that over compression, because that's the way they record it. Yeah, that's the way they record it, man. And they record it, they mix it, they just over compress it, and that's the way that it comes out in those recordings. But apparently, the reason they used to do that was because they knew that they were doing it for the radio play. Yeah. So once you get your song on the radio, it sounds good because they quash out the right amount of top end. And so when the actual releases come out on the album, it's like, this is kind of painful to listen to at full bore, especially if you're wearing headphones.
Was Californication a Rick Rubin one?
I can't remember. I think so. It was part of the loudness war.
Yeah.
If that kind of is anything to go by.
Because their argument, I think, was that the radio stations were going to slam it through a compressor as well. So they sort of tried to make it as close to how people were going to hear it to start. They were going to compress it before the other guys got to it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, that kind of thing. And over compression on a recording it's noticeable and it's not exactly pleasant.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really not pleasant. And it's even worse when you get things that actually clip,
Yes.
i.e. Death Magnetic by Metallica.
Yep.
That entire album was I remember like buying that album when it came out in I think 2008. I was actually in Adelaide at the time because my sister was living in the Adelaide Hills somewhere in Strathalbyn, that place. And we went into Adelaide for the day. I can't remember what part of Adelaide we were in. I think it might have been Hackham, or it might have been actually in the Adelaide CBD itself because we went there on the same day. But I went into a local music shop that sold records and albums and stuff like that. It could have even just been Sanity, let's be real.
Yeah.
But it was going for a pretty good price, and I had a bit of pocket money on me. This was pre-job days, of course.
Yep.
So I had enough to get, I think I had $20 on me, and it was going for $20 despite being a new album. And I was just like, I'm going to buy this. Because, you know, kids do that when they see something they really like.
It's the same guys that did Kill 'Em All. How could you go wrong?
Kill 'Em All, exactly. Or Ride the Lightning at that point.
Yeah.
I think at that point, Ride the Lightning was probably my favorite, and probably still holds up as one of my favorites today, Metallica records. But I listened to it. I put it on, and I think I actually, because I was in the back seat, right? And I was, I think I said to Mum, whoever was in the passenger side, because Dad was driving, I was like, hey, Mum, do you reckon you might be able to turn that down a bit?
Yeah.
I'm getting a bit of a headache back here. And she thought I wasn't enjoying the album probably or something like that. But I was just like, no, that's really fucking loud.
Yeah.
And that's actually kind of ear-splitting, you know. And the songs were good, don't get me wrong, but if shitty production is plaguing your album.
Yeah.
Oh, and the mastering. The mastering is the worst part, because if you get all the stuff clipping purposely, and their motivation was, let's make the loudest record ever.
Yeah.
They did that, but not in a very tasteful way. You know what I mean? And
That's what it comes down to. And when it is fatiguing to listen to as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's all, there's like overtones and all sorts of stuff when it clips.
And it doesn't help when none of those songs seem to go under 6 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of like, wow. Like it was, you get to the end of the album and it's just like, my head. Like you do have to listen to that album at a low volume, and thankfully somebody's actually kind of remixed that a little bit.
Oh, good.
Yeah, with the Guitar Hero stems.
I heard about that. I was going to bring that up. Yeah, and they're like,
Somebody
hey,
actually
the
did.
Guitar Hero stems haven't been clipped like
Yeah.
the actual release. And yeah, people did say that was the best way to listen to it.
It was the best way to listen to it. It's all up on YouTube. Like you can find links and you can listen to the whole album that way, and it's a lot more pleasant to listen to. I had to, as soon as I got a little bit more access to internet and stuff like that, if I ever wanted to, you know, binge that album, I would do it that way and try and find the Guitar Hero kind of thing, because I couldn't listen to the CD version.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Metallica, but you did a bad.
Well, we know one more thing that you're not going to do with Golden Estates when those new recordings come out.
Hi, Rick Rubin. Yeah, no. Or just over compress it, you know. And when you do a course like this at the Box Hill Institute, then you really do find out why that's a bad idea and how to curve that, and just do it properly, you know. And I'm thankful with the way that the demos actually turned out online, that you'll hear online if you indeed want to go and check them out, is that everything fell to a healthy medium. Like they still, you know, they're noticeable, but they're not like in your face. And that's what I really wanted to do, especially with mastering. You know, you want to bring out the top end. You don't want to make it bottom end heavy, well, not too much anyway. And you want to have that right amount of mid range as well, just so you can accurately catch things like snare hits and
Yep.
stuff like that, which all kind of basically sit around the mid-range.
Absolutely.
And like the mid-range to top, that's usually where you'll find a good crack and snare sound, you know? And you got to know where to, what frequencies to cut, which ones to boost, especially if you do like the parallel EQs and things like that, which I'm kind of getting the hang of, even still after this day. And I'm going to probably sound like a bit of a... I use Logic Pro to do pretty much most of it, if not all of it. I don't per se like using Pro Tools that much. Yeah, so none of the demos were done with anything to do with Pro Tools, basically. However, I think once we start doing the legitimate recordings, I will definitely have to go over Pro Tools, especially if we do it in a studio, that kind of thing, because it's still used as a very professional tool. It's the industry standard, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, as an absolute dinosaur, and I've got some horror stories to tell about using it in a studio.
I think every engineer has some Pro Tools horror stories, me included. We will wrap it up there, Taylor.
No worries.
Thanks so much for coming back on. Now, how can we find some Golden Estate stuff on the interweb, on the tubes?
We have our Golden Estates official YouTube page, YouTube channel, sorry.
Fantastic.
I should say. It's just Golden Estates AUS.
Yep.
To signify that we're Aussie, you know, Aussie. Oi, oi, oi. Yep. We're patriotic. We also have our SoundCloud, so
Yes.
it's also got the demos up there. Our YouTube, we have 2 lyric videos if you actually
Cool. Yeah.
if you want to learn what the lyrics are. I mean, that's always a good way to go about it. So if you want to sing along to our songs live, you can definitely do that. And what else? Like, we just have our Instagram page, so please follow us on Instagram. It'll do our cred pretty good if we can look like we have more followers. And we will be posting we continue to post very vital information about, you know, gigs coming up and all that kind of stuff. Like, that's an easy way to find out. Plus, we'll do that on our Facebook page, so definitely give us a like on our Facebook page as well. I sound like a YouTuber, you know, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Ring that bell.
Ring that bell. Subscribe to our Patreon.
This is where I'll flash up the YouTube thing on my one too.
Right over my face. Right over my face.
Taylor Macleod, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're
Mr.
welcome.
Babble with Ben.
Mr. Babble with Ben, that's me.
That's you.
Have a good one.
Thank you very much, sir.